السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء، واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم، ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد، فإن أصدق الكلام كلام الله، وأحسن الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم، وشر الأمور محدثاتها، وكل محدثة بدعة، وكل بدعة ضلالة، وكل ضلالة في النار. وبعد. Ikhwan, the topic of sadaqah and giving charity for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is from the topics that not only within our Sharia and within this ummah, the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was a topic that was a very important and relevant one, but it has been established that it is well known that this action of giving in charity is one that is an established, well-known act of ibadah among the previous ummah, among the previous nations. And indeed Allah Azza wa Jal informs us in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala of the characteristics of the believers, and at the head and the forefront of their characteristics is that they establish the salah and they give the zakah, or that they spend from what we have given to them. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes mention of the fact that this spending from what Allah has blessed the servants with, it is from the acts of righteousness that not only among our ummah but even with the previous nations, Allah Azza wa Jal had commanded the people with that. The sadaqat and giving in charity, it has a number of benefits, and thus we, as were those before us, commanded with sadaqah. That which will establish the fact that those who were from the previous nations and the previous they were commanded with giving in charity, is the hadith of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam that mentions that indeed Allah Azza wa Jal commanded Yahya bin Zakaria to give Bani Israel a admonition concerning 5 things, that he should warn them, he should act upon them first and foremost, and that he should warn them and remind them of those 5 things. And it's a lengthy hadith, but from that which is present within the hadith is that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he commanded, or he informed that Yahya commanded them to give sadaqah, because Yahya initially he was slow in carrying out the command of Allah Azza wa Jal. And so Isa ibn Maryam, Isa the son of Mary, he approached Yahya knowing about the command of Allah Azza wa Jal and said, Allah Azza wa Jal has commanded you with 5 things. Now either you carry them out and inform Bani Israel concerning them, or I will inform them. And so Yahya responded by saying that, do not inform them, because I fear if you inform them before I do, that Allah Azza wa Jal will cause the earth to open up and swallow me. And so Allah Azza wa Jal commanded Yahya to command Bani Israel with 5 things. The first of them was that he commanded them with La ilaha illallah, to establish the ibadah and acts of worship to Allah Azza wa Jal alone. And he explained the fact that the one who establishes ibadah to Allah alone and worships Allah alone, then the one who turns his worship rather to other than Allah, is like a man who has a servant, and that servant works throughout the day, and then at the end of the day he presents his work to other than his master. Which of you will be pleased with a servant like this? And so Allah Azza wa Jal has commanded us to worship Him alone, wahdahu la sharika lah. He said, and I command you with salah, I command you to establish a prayer. He said, وَإِذَا صَلَّيْتُمْ فَلَا تَلْتَفِتُوا. And when you pray, then don't turn left and right, and you don't look around in your salah. He said, and I command you with fasting. And that he mentioned that the fasting, or the example of the one who fasts, is like a man who has a purse, and in that purse there is something from musk, and the people are acquainted with his musk, and so they gather around him seeking something from that. Instead of fasting, and the smell and the fragrance of the mouth of the fasting person is sweeter to Allah Azza wa Jal than that musk is to those people. And he said, and I command you with sadaqah. I command you to give sadaqah. For indeed the example of the one who gives sadaqah is as the example of a man who flees from his enemy. A man who flees from an enemy that is pursuing him and chases him. And he said that, and so when they seize him, that he offers to buy his freedom. And so he spends everything that he has buying his freedom from them. And he said that nothing frees a person from the fire like giving in sadaqah. And so that indicates then that Bani Israel and the previous nations, they were commanded likewise with sadaqah. They were commanded to give in charity. As far as the sadaqah within our sharia is concerned, then it is of two main types: sadaqatun wajiba and sadaqa nafila or mustahabba. The compulsory type of sadaqah that Allah Azza wa Jal makes binding upon any individual that is from Ahlul Zakah, and the supererogatory type of sadaqah, or the optional type of sadaqah. As far as the binding, wajib, compulsory form of sadaqah, then it is that which revolves around zakah from one's wealth on the basis of that person fulfilling certain characteristics. Zakah is not wajib upon everybody. Zakah is not wajib upon everybody. Bima'ana that the rule of zakah being from the pillars of Islam, no doubt it is from the pillars of Islam, and it is binding upon those whom it is binding upon. That is, it is binding upon those who fulfill the characteristics of causing them to be from the people of zakah. Those characteristics and those sifat are, firstly, that that individual has what is known as the nisab. He possesses the nisab. And the nisab is that amount of wealth that one has to have in savings, or we'll move on to that, but the amount of wealth that one has to have before he becomes from the people of sadaqah, or the people of zakah, sadaqatin wajiba. The amount of wealth that a person has to have before he becomes from the people of zakah. As far as the amount then and its value, then it is that which is equivalent to 85 grams of gold. That which is equivalent to 85 grams of gold. And so whatever the value of 85 grams of gold is in any place or time, then a person, before he becomes from the people of zakah, before he becomes from the people who have to give zakah, he must have in his possession an amount of wealth equal to 85 grams of gold in value. And that is easily calculated, meaning that you ascertain the value of 1 gram of gold in your era and then times it by 85. And if you have that amount of wealth with you, then you are from Ahlul Zakah. Secondly, that amount of wealth has to be from the wealth that a person has saved. Yani, it is not from the wealth that he uses. If he uses that wealth, then he does not become from the people of zakah. If he uses and has to use it, he is not from the people whose zakah is wajib upon. Thirdly, that hala alayhi al-hawl. The third condition is that the hawl, or the period of 1 year, must pass over that individual when that amount of wealth is present in his possession untouched. If that year passes over him, when that amount of wealth is present with him untouched, then zakah is wajib upon him, and that is 2.5% of whatever he has over the nisab, over that amount of wealth that he should have, or over the value of 85 grams of gold. So if we were to say, for example, that the value of 85 grams of gold, for example, is £2,000, then before a person becomes from the people of zakah, he has to have that amount, 2,000. Yeah, and it is just an example. Naturally, the calculation you would have to do in relation to the value of gold in our time. But in any case, if we were going to say, for argument's sake, that is £2,000, that £2,000 has to be in his possession, first and foremost. Secondly, it has to be an amount that he does not take from to carry out his day-to-day affairs, his amenities, to look after his home and his family. That has to be savings untouched. If then he has that amount and it is saved and untouched, then the third thing that we look at is, has he had and possessed that amount for more than 1 year? If he has possessed the amount for more than 1 year, then when that year passes over, that amount that he has saved, he has to spend 2.5 or give 2.5% of that amount in charity. As far as then, if a person were to have £10,000, what part of that wealth is the zakat to be taken from? What does he calculate the 2.5% from? If we got, no. He has £10,000 savings. 2,000 is the nisab, but he actually has £10,000. Ahsant. The whole amount, he calculates 2.5% of the whole 10,000 that he has, because of the fact that his saved wealth is now more than the nisab. And so the calculation is made from all of his saved wealth that is above the nisab, all of his saved wealth, 2.5% of it is given as zakah. As far as zakah is concerned, it is likewise given, ayyuhal ikhwa, to particular areas. That it is not just that he gives it to whomsoever he sees fit. Rather, Allah Azza wa Jal has legislated that there are categories of individuals that may receive that wealth of his, that zakah. And Allah Azza wa Jal mentions zakah in Surah Tawbah, إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ وَالْمَسَاكِينَ وَالْعَامِلِينَ عَلَيْهَا. Allah mentions 8 categories of people. إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ, Allah mentions that sadaqat, and here the sadaqat refers to zakah, is for the fuqara, for the poor, وَالْمَسَاكِينَ, and for the destitute, and عَامِلِينَ عَلَيْهَا, and those who work with zakah. As far as the first 2 categories, the poor and the destitute, and the scholars differ concerning who they are exactly. Some mention that the poor are those who have absolutely nothing. They have absolutely nothing, no possessions whatsoever. And that the destitute are those who have something, but it is not sufficient for them to carry out, and for them to live a normal life. So they do possess something, but they don't have enough to carry out a normal life. And there are those scholars who hold that the affair is actually the opposite. That the fuqara, that the poor are those who have a little something, but it is not sufficient for them, and that the destitute, or that the masakeen, are those who have absolutely nothing. And what is most correct, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best, is that the poor, the fuqara, are those who have nothing, while the masakeen are those who are needy, though they may possess something. And an evidence for that is, as occurs in Surah Al-Kahf, Allah Azza wa Jal, in the story of Khadir and Musa, when Allah Azza wa Jal sent Khadir to Musa. Khadir, an individual who the scholars differ whether he was a prophet or not, he was sent to Musa as a sign from Allah Azza wa Jal, on the basis of a statement that Musa made. On an occasion he gave a khutbah, and he said that verily there is no one more knowledgeable than me. There is no one more knowledgeable than me. So Allah Azza wa Jal sent Khadir in order to inform him of the fact that, and in order to show him that in fact there was someone that had more knowledge than himself. And so Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned and informed Musa alayhi salatu wasalam of the place that they would go to meet Khadir. And that is that they would have to journey and they would embark upon the ocean and that they would come across, or they would carry with them a fish. And that Musa, with the youth that he left out with, and what is correct as occurs in the hadith of Sahih Muslim, is that that youth was Yusha, was Joshua, who was a young boy at that time, who went on to become, after being the student of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam and his companion and disciple, he went on to become a prophet himself. That Joshua was the one that accompanied Musa on that journey. And so Allah Azza wa Jal informs us of the affair and of the story that Musa said to Joshua after their journeying, "Atina ghada'ana laqad laqina min safarina hada nasaba." Bring to us our evening meal, for indeed, or our lunch, for indeed we have received difficulty during this journey. And then while they were eating, they lost the fish. And that was a sign, ikhwan, that they would come across Musa. That fish that they were carrying, that they would lose it. And it swam away, it swam in the sea in a strange manner. And Musa, he mentioned that this was what we were seeking for. This was the sign that they would meet Khadir. When they met Khadir, Musa said to Khadir that verily I have come to follow you, to take and benefit from that which Allah has taught you from the guidance. And so he said that you may follow me, but do not ask me about anything that I do until I inform you of why I did what I did. And so they were journeying with Khadir, and he killed a young boy. When he killed the young boy, Musa said, verily that was a soul that did nothing to anyone, and it didn't harm anyone. Why did you kill it? And so he said that, didn't I say to you that you should not question me concerning what I do? Likewise, from that which occurs in the story, is that they embarked upon a boat. And Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned, a boat كانت لمساكين يعملون في البحر. A boat that was possessed by some masakeen, or by some poor people that used to work upon the oceans. Yani, that they would bring people across rivers and what have you, and then they would receive payment for that, and that was how they would seek and gain sustenance. And so Khadir made a hole in the boat, and they were not able to utilize the boat. And so again Musa, he made an objection to him making a hole in the boat. And why would you make a hole in the boat of these masakeen, of these poor people? Thirdly, that they went to a village, a township, and they, as wayfarers, sought somewhere to sleep and some rest and somewhere to eat. And no one from the whole of the village entertained them. And that was aib. That was a big, it's a big disrespect in that time, because during that era, if you were a wayfarer or a traveler, it was well known and established that you would be looked after as a wayfarer and as a traveler. And no one took care of them, no one looked after them. So as they left the township, they found a wall that was tumbling down, and Khadir took time out and rebuilt the whole wall. So Musa said that you should have taken some payment for that work. And so he said that is the end, then this is the third thing that you've asked me about, and that is the end of our meeting together. And I'm paraphrasing, ikhwan, the story. That is the end of our meeting together. And so then he said, and I shall inform you of why I did what I did. He said, as for the young boy, then it was the child of two righteous individuals, and your Lord, and he was going to grow to be wretched. So your Lord decreed that he would be replaced with a better son, one that would be righteous. And that was the reason he killed him. He said, as far as the boat, then it belonged to some masakeen. It belonged to some poor people who used to work upon the ocean, but the seas that they would work upon or had upon it a tyrannical king that would take anybody who was upon that ocean as slaves. And as far as the wall, then beneath it, there was the inheritance and a treasure that belonged to two young orphans that had not yet come of age, and their parents were righteous. And so your Lord wanted and wished that that wealth would be protected for them. That is why he rebuilt the wall. And so, Ikhwan, the story, it has many benefits. And from its benefits, Ikhwan, is that on some occasions, that which we see to be evil, or that which we see and may not be able to understand, and we hear oftentimes non-Muslims saying, well, why would Allah, why would God, if he's so merciful, why would he legislate starving and hunger, starvation and hunger in Africa, for example? Why would there be a famine in Ethiopia? Why would those young children die in Syria? And why would this and that happen in these various regions, in these various places? Sometimes there are wisdoms, brothers and sisters, that we're not able to perceive. On the face of those wisdoms and on the face of those occurrences, that which we see is apparently evil as far as we're concerned. But behind them, there are wisdoms that Allah Azza wa Jal knows best concerning. But from the story, Allah Azza wa Jal mentions that this, concerning their boat, Allah mentions, كَانَتْ لِمَسَاكِينَ, that it belonged to masakeen. And this masakeen is the plural of miskeen, that used to work upon the ocean. So the scholars, they mentioned that here Allah Azza wa Jal mentions the statement of Khadir, who said that the boat belonged to some masakeen. And so though they were masakeen, and even though they were miskeen, they possessed the boat. And so they had something from possession, and they had something from work that they would earn by using that boat. And so the point then is that Allah Azza wa Jal, when he mentions al-faqir wal-miskeen, the faqir is the destitute one that has nothing, while the miskeen is the one that possesses something, may possibly possess something, but it is not sufficient for him, so he's still considered poor and needy. And so Allah Azza wa Jal has legislated that zakah be given to them. إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين والعاملين عليها. And those who work with zakah, yani those who pay zakah, those who collect the zakah, it is permissible for them to receive payment from it. That if then the Amir al-Mu'mineen, he places over the collection of the zakah individuals that their job is to collect the zakah or to distribute the zakah. Those who have been given the job of collecting the zakah or distributing the zakah, it is permissible according to the verse for them to take from the zakah. And they are one of the categories that may take from it. Because it may be that this work of theirs takes up and prevents them from working. This work of them collecting zakah and distributing zakah, it prevents them from actually having any other job. And thus, for them to be paid from the zakah, Allah Azza wa Jal permits that and legislates that. وَالْمُؤَلَّفَةِ قُلُوبِهِمْ, Allah likewise mentions, and the mu'allafati qulubihim, yani those who their hearts, we're trying to win their hearts over, to bring them to Islam. It is permissible to give them from the zakah in order to win them over. So mathalan, if there is an individual who is relatively poor, he's listening to Islam, he's quite close, that it is prescribed to give him something from zakah, or to give him something from wealth, in order to help him with his needs generally, and that it may be an encouragement for him to enter Islam. He may say and feel that this is a religion that has in it brotherhood, that has in it generosity among them, and therefore it is the type of religion that I want to be a proponent and want to be a part of. And the Messenger ﷺ gave, on a number of occasions, he gave wealth and zakah to numerous individuals. On an occasion, a man came to the Messenger ﷺ and said, O Messenger of Allah, O Muhammad, give me from the wealth. Give me something from wealth. As occurs with one of the Bedouin Arabs who came and pulled and dragged the cloak of the Messenger of Allah to the extent that it marked his shoulder. And the companions were upset at this disrespect of the Messenger of Allah. So the Messenger of Allah, when it happened, he turned around, he saw it was a Bedouin, and he laughed, and then he commanded that something be given to him from wealth. Because the Messenger of Allah knew that the Bedouins, knew that they were raw, and that was just, possibly they didn't even intend disrespect. He said, Ya Muhammad, a'tini min malillahi alladhi indak. He said, Muhammad, give me from the wealth of Allah that you possess. And so the man, the Messenger of Allah turned around and saw him and commanded that he be given something from wealth. Likewise, another man approached the Messenger of Allah and said, and asked him for something from wealth. And the Messenger of Allah said, do you see those two mountains? He said, yes. He said, between them, can you see all that cattle between them? He said, yes. He said, take all of it. He said, oh Muhammad, don't joke with me. And you don't play with me. He said, take all of it, it's yours. And so the man took all of the cattle that was between those two mountains. And then he went back to his tribe and said, oh my people, embrace Islam. For indeed Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he gives la yakhsha al-faqa. He gives and he does not fear poverty. And that generosity, ikhwan, and that characteristic of the Messenger of Allah being generous was likewise from the noble characteristics and the noble mannerisms that the Messenger of Allah made manifest, and it caused many people to enter Islam. And so the affair then of the mu'allafati qulubihim, not only does one give from his own wealth if he sees that someone is in need and it may have an effect upon him being interested and entering Islam, but he may even be given from the zakah. And that is on one of the occasions, the Messenger gave one of the non-Muslims 100 camels. And so the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he did so, Dhul Khuwaysirah, he said, Ya mu'a'dil ya Muhammad, be just, O Muhammad. So the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, and who will not be just if I am not just? Or who will be just if I am not just? And so the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it is established, ikhwan, that he would give from the wealth and from the zakah, sometimes from the spoils of war, in order to win the hearts of the people. And that, ikhwan, is from the noble characteristics. Indeed, as occurs in an authentic hadith, the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, hadith Sahih Muslim, the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, كان أجود الناس, hadith of Ibn Abbas, كان أجود الناس وكان أجود ما يكون في رمضان, that he was the most generous of the people generally. And then he mentioned وكان أجود ما يكون في رمضان, but he was the most generous in Ramadan. And so that which is established is that he was generally the most generous, but he was even more generous in Ramadan. And so the affair then of the Messenger of Allah being generous was not only for winning over the hearts, ikhwan, but from the effects that it had was that it won over the hearts. And likewise, it is permissible to give the zakah to someone who we intend to win their hearts over. Similarly, from those characteristics or from those aqsam and categories of people, it is permissible to give the zakah to those who are fir riqab, that is, those who are slaves, and that the zakah money may be used for the freeing of slaves. The Messenger of Allah, likewise, he mentioned, the ayah likewise informs us of the gharimin, those who are bound by debt. Though some of the scholars hold that the gharimin are those who stood as guarantor for someone else, and that person absconded and left them with the debt. And if an individual, he stands as a guarantor for someone else, and that person is unable to pay, and now the debt is upon him, then it is permissible to give that individual from the zakah in order to alleviate the debt that is and the burden that is now upon him. While some of the scholars hold that it is general for those who are in debt generally, and who are held down and are under trial of debt. Likewise, fi sabilillah. Likewise, from the categories of individual that may receive charity or may receive the zakah, fi sabilillah. And the bulk of Ahl al-Ilm, the bulk of the people of knowledge, they hold that this fi sabilillah is a reference to jihad. It's a reference to military expeditions. That the zakah is used upon the funding the military expeditions if there are legislated military expeditions that are underway. And so jihad is from the categories that the zakah may be spent upon. And the last of them, the eighth of them, is upon the wayfarer. Upon the wayfarer. That if the wayfarer, traveler, he's come to a land and he, for example, he's lost his camel and he's lost all of his belongings, and now he's a wayfarer stuck in a land, that he may be given from the zakah to help him to return back to his home. It doesn't necessitate that he has to be a poor wayfarer. And that many of the scholars, Ikhwan, establish and explain the fact that the wayfarer doesn't necessitate for him to receive or be able to receive zakah. It does not necessitate that he has to be a poor wayfarer and only he may receive it. Rather, even the wayfarer that is wealthy, and he may be filthy rich, but he now has a situation, he's in a land wherein he is stuck. A scenario has come to him, something has happened to him, he's stuck. Now it is permissible to give that individual from the zakah, and those then are the 8 categories of zakah, or the people who may receive zakah. And so they are the poor, the destitute, the one who works with zakah, the one who we're trying to win their hearts over, the one who is in debt, the wayfarer, that is the wayfarer or the traveler, with the freeing of a slave, and with the one who is gharimin, the one who has this debt over his head. That will establish then, if we understand those categories, that it is not permissible, for example, to give or to spend zakah money on the building of a masjid, mathalan. And that is not something that is permissible. For indeed, that does not fall within the categories of those who may receive, or the affairs that zakah may be spent upon. Likewise, it is not permissible to spend the zakah upon someone who, though it is an issue that the people of knowledge differ concerning, for example, a student of knowledge, that the bulk of Ahl al-Ilm hold impermissibility, though from the people of knowledge are those who hold that he enters, that is the person of knowledge, the student of knowledge, that he enters into those who are considered fi sabilillah. Now the majority of the scholars of tafsir hold that this term fi sabilillah is a reference to jihad. But some hold that this fi sabilillah includes the student of knowledge, and thus some of the scholars, they hold that the zakah may be spent upon the student of knowledge. But for us to understand then the categories in which the zakah may be spent upon, and we see that these categories, ikhwan, generally they are from the daruriyat, and from those things that are of a necessity. Those things that are of a necessity. The poor and the destitute, they need help. Those who are close to Islam and may be aided to enter Islam with zakah, then that is something that is legislated. The freeing of a slave, the helping and the aiding the wayfarer. All of these affairs, ikhwan, are noble causes that Allah Azza wa Jal has legislated the giving of zakah to. Outside of those causes, outside of those affairs that are present within the 8 categories, then there are issues that still need financial support. And there are issues, ikhwan, that one may spend his wealth upon. And that is where the discussion then of the sadaqatun nafila, it enters. If we understand zakah generally, and we understand how it is taken from one's wealth, and that it only becomes wajib when we possess a particular amount of wealth, and as the scholars mention, an important principle, that it is not compulsory upon the Muslim to earn the amount of wealth that would cause him to be from the people of zakah. It is not compulsory upon the Muslim to strive to earn the amount of wealth that would cause him to be from the people of zakah. And that is, ikhwan, is something that we hear people saying often, I want to get a good job, and so, I want to give zakah. I want to get a good job so that I can give zakah. That it is not compulsory upon the Muslim to strive to obtain a job that will cause him to be from the people of zakah, and that he has enough money to be from the people of zakah that he may give it. It is only wajib upon the one who Allah blesses him with wealth. But it is not now wajib for every Muslim to strive to receive and obtain the type of wealth that would cause him to be from the people of zakah. La. And that is no doubt from the mercy and the ni'mah of Allah Azza wa Jal, from some people, or from the people of those who Allah Azza wa Jal has blessed with wealth. And it is likewise a trial for them. It is not just a blessing, ikhwan, but it is a trial for them. Similarly, from them are those who Allah Azza wa Jal has placed poverty upon them, and hardship and difficulty upon them, and that is a blessing for them as well, whether they realize that or not. That is a blessing for them as well. And Allah Azza wa Jal, as the Messenger of Allah informed us, indeed Allah, when He loves His servant, He protects him from the dunya. He protects him from the dunya. As one of you would stand over his sick, the sick relative that he may have, feeding him water. And so this term, He protects him from the dunya, it may be that protection from the dunya is that Allah Azza wa Jal doesn't cause him to be wealthy. That Allah Azza wa Jal does not bestow large amounts of wealth upon him because of what He knows of His servant. From the people are those who, if they receive wealth, then they would spend it upon good causes and upon khair, and it would increase them in good, and they would utilize it for that which will be of benefit for them in the hereafter. And then from the worshippers and the servants of Allah, and perhaps, ikhwan, it is the reality with the majority of the people. And also, if they become wealthy, then that wealth will take them away from Allah Azza wa Jal, and would weaken them in their deen and their practice of the religion. And thus, ikhwan, when we see those who Allah Azza wa Jal mentions are thrown into the hellfire Yawm al-Qiyamah, Allah Azza wa Jal mentions concerning them that from them are those who will say, after Allah mentioned, خُذُوهُ فَغُلُّوهُ ثُمَّ الْجَحِيمَ صَلُّوهُ. Those who, when they were seized, and when they were given their scrolls in their left hands, they will say, woe if only I were not given my scroll, and if only I did not know what my reckoning was. And then he would go on to say, and he will go on to say, مَا أَغْنَى عَنِّي مَالِيَا هَلَكَ عَنِّي سُلْطَانِيَا. My wealth availed me not. And my wealth was of no benefit to me. And my children, my authority has now diminished and perished. So Allah Azza wa Jal establishes in the verse that is a statement of those who are from the wealthy. Because from his statements is, my wealth availed me not, which has in it an indication of the dangers of wealth. And so, ikhwan, the affair then of zakah is one that is not compulsory for any individual to strive to obtain wealth so that he may give zakah. If he is wealthy, Allah blesses him with wealth, and then he has surplus wealth, and that surplus wealth reaches the nisab, and that remains with him for the period of a year or more, then he is from the people of zakah. If it is that he has to use it, he takes from it, he puts it back, he utilizes it, then he is not from the people of zakah until that amount remains untouched for the period of a year. And so those other areas, other than the 8 areas that Allah Azza wa Jal has legislated that zakah be spent upon, ikhwan, here we have the dawr, and we have the station of the sadaqatun nafila, of the supererogatory charity. And Allah Azza wa Jal has encouraged us with giving supererogatory charity throughout the Quran. Allah Azza wa Jal in numerous places, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu anfiqu mimma razaqnakum. O you who believe, spend from that which we have given to you. And spend from that which we have given to you until or before a day comes that you will not, or that no wealth or children will avail an individual. Similarly, ikhwan, we have numerous ahadith speaking of and extolling the virtues of charity generally. As far as zakah, then that is the sadaqah that is wajibah. It is compulsory, we have to give it, whether we like it or not. And what is correct is that it is, in the Islamic state, it is taken from that individual if he does not give it. If he's from the people of zakah, and that he lives in the Islamic state, then it is not optional for him to give it. It is taken from him. Under the Muslim ruler, it is taken from him. غصبا عنه, regardless of whether he wants to give it or not. That is as it relates to zakah. Because why? Because the zakah, as the scholars mentioned, is haqqul mal. It is the right of wealth, and it is the right of those needy. And so, if he refuses to give it, it is taken from him. That is in the state, Islamic state. As far as then the affair of sadaqah, then the sadaqah, ayyuha al-ikhwah, there are numerous ahadith and numerous texts that encourage with the giving of sadaqah and mention the reward for those who give in charity and the great station of sadaqah. And there are a number of ahadith, ikhwan, and we'll mention them bi'idhnillah, or we'll mention as much of them as we can in this sitting, inshallah. From those ahadith, we have those ahadith that inform us of the great station of sadaqah and that which, or the benefit that the one who gives it receives. From those benefits, ikhwan, is that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam informed us of the fact that it removes and it takes away from that servant the ghadab and the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, regardless of what one gives. That even if a person were to give a few pennies, but he gave it lillah, he gave it sincerely, for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal, sincerely, then even those few pennies remove the ghadab and remove the anger of Allah Azza wa Jal. As occurs in a hadith, the Messenger of Allah referred to it as tutfi'u ghadab al-rabb, that it extinguishes the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that anger of Allah Azza wa Jal manifests in the fire. And that is how Allah Azza wa Jal punishes his servants and punishes his creation. And so the Messenger of Allah, he mentioned, inna sadaqati sir tutfi'u ghadab al-rabb, that the secret sadaqah, that is the sadaqah that a person gives when no one but him and Allah Azza wa Jal knows that he's given that. That secret sadaqah, it puts out the ghadab and the anger of Allah Azza wa Jal. And that is an encouragement, ikhwan, for us to nurture ourselves upon that. That we don't become covetous with the wealth that we have. And it is mine, mine, mine. And that I've worked hard for it. And that I'm going to use it all upon myself. Rather that he nurtures himself upon giving, secretly. So no one knows, ikhwan, except him, Allah Azza wa Jal, him and Allah subhanahu, or him, Allah, and the individual that he gave to. Because it may even be that that individual he gives without that person even knowing who gave to him. And so he delivers a letter, and that letter has in it some wealth. And this wealth is accompanied with a small note. Concerning your situation, I just thought that I will help you with this amount. And the person who receives the letter and the note, he has no idea where that letter and that note came from. Who gave it to him? Now, that is the sadaqah to sir, that secret sadaqah. No one knows about it. And so the Messenger of Allah informs us, ikhwan, of the fact that it removes and extinguishes the anger of Allah Azza wa Jal. Seriously, similarly, ikhwan, from the ahadith that establish and speak of the virtue of sadaqah, we have numerous ahadith. From them, we have the statement of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam concerning the sadaqah and the fact that sadaqah itself, and this is, ikhwan, not sadaqah to sir, just sadaqah, not secret sadaqah, just sadaqah, that it blots out and emits the khati'ah. It emits sins. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, وَالصَّدَقَةُ تُطْفِئُ الْخَطِيئَةِ. He said that sadaqah, it emits khati'ah, it removes sins. Those sins that you have in your scroll of deeds, every time you're giving charity, then you have something erased. Regardless of how big or small the charity is. As I say, even if it is a penny that you give in charity, even if it is a penny, that something is erased from your evil deeds. And how much in need, ikhwan, we are of having those deeds removed. 1 penny. For indeed the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he informed us of the fact that the Messenger that Allah Azza wa Jal, if a person gives in charity, even if it is a date seed, the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, that Allah Azza wa Jal yurabbiha, that Allah nurtures and cultivates his charity. Just as one of you cultivates his young horse until it becomes like a mountain. And so a date, ikhwan, 1 date, if we were to look at a date, I mean, how would you evaluate or how would you value a date? Few pence, few pennies? If you look at a packet of dates and you pay, what, £2 for them? And within that date you may have some 50, 60 dates. And if you do the maths, you'll find it is a few pennies, if that. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentioned that Allah Azza wa Jal, even if a person were to give a date or a date seed, that Allah Azza wa Jal would nurture that and cultivate that charity of his, just as one of you cultivates his horse, his young horse, who nurture it until it becomes like a mountain. That's 1 date, which is equivalent to a few pennies. And so, ikhwan, even if you were to give just a few pennies in charity and you yourself thought nothing of it, that charity, if it is given sincerely, Allah Azza wa Jal nurtures and cultivates that charity until it becomes like a mountain. So Yawm al-Qiyamah, when you were thinking that it was just that penny, 2 pennies, 10 pence, Yawm al-Qiyamah, ikhwan, you see that those few pennies in front of you are a large mountain of reward from those few pennies. And that then should be from the text that would encourage us, ikhwan, with the giving in charity. Likewise, the Messenger of Allah mentioned that from the benefits of giving in charity is that it is in it a protection from the fire. Messenger of Allah, he said, فَاتَّقُوا النَّارِ وَلَوْ بِشِقِّ تَمْرَةٍ. And that is, ikhwan, as occurs in authentic hadith, مَا مِنْكُم مِّنْ أَحَدٍ إِلَّا سَيُكَلِّمُهُ اللَّهُ أو إلا سيكلمه ربه ليس بينه وبينه ترجمان. That there is not one of you except that his Lord shall address him without there being a translator between him and Allah. There is not one of you. And you reflect, ikhwan, upon that standing. You reflect upon that difficult situation. You reflect upon that reality that is coming to each and every one of us. That there is a day that is coming that you alone will stand before your Lord, Rabbil Alameen. لَيْسَ بَيْنَهُ وَبَيْنَهُ تُرْجُمَانٍ. There not being between him and Allah a translator. فَيَنْظُرْ أَيْمَنَ مِنْهُ فَلَا يَرَى إِلَّا مَا قَدَّمَ وَيَنْظُرْ أَشْأَمَ مِنْهُ وَلَا يَرَى إِلَّا مَا قَدَّمَ وينظر بين يديه ولا يرى إلا النار فاتقوا النار ولو بشق تمرة. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam continued, and so he will look to his right and he will not see except that which he himself has put forward from actions, and he will look to his left and he will not see except that which he has put forward, and he'll be surrounded by his own actions, his own deeds, good or bad. When he stands before Allah Azza wa Jal, his reality on that day is, what did you do? That life that you were given, that period that you had, what was it that you carried out, good or bad? And he will be presented with his deeds to his left and to his right, and he will see every single deed. فَيَنْظُرُ أَيْمَنَ مِنْهُ فَلَا يَرَى إِلَّا مَا قَدَّمَ. He will look to his right and not see except that which he has done, that which he has put forward. وَيَنْظُرْ أَشْأَمَ مِنْهُ وَلَا يَرَى إِلَّا مَا قَدَّمَ. He will look to his left and not see except that which he has put forward, good and bad deeds. وَيَنْظُرْ بَيْنَ يَدَيْهِ وَلَا يَرَى إِلَّا النَّارِ. And he will look in front of him and not see except the fire. A yawm that is shadid, ikhwan. A day that is shadid jiddan. So the Messenger, he said, فَاتَّقُوا النَّارِ وَلَوْ بِشِقِّ تَمْرَةٍ. He said, so fear the fire even if it is with half a date. Even if it is with half a date. And that statement, fear the fire even if it is with half a date, look at what the Messenger mentioned that will protect a person from the fire. Sadaqah. Fear the fire even if it is with half a date. Yani even if it is by giving the sadaqah of half a date. Giving charity of half a date. And so again, ikhwan, we should nurture ourselves upon not holding on to that wealth. Nurture ourselves upon giving surplus. Just as we should nurture ourselves upon those acts of worship like Qiyam al-Layl, instead of wasting our time by night, that if we're awake at night, pray rak'atayn, ya akhi. Look, wudu, pray rak'atayn. Look at the fadl and the ajr al-azim that one receives, and look at the things that you can ask Allah. Nothing, yani, only you and Allah Azza wa Jalla at that time. Look at the nur that you receive from Allah Azza wa Jalla, standing before Allah Azza wa Jalla at that time. And some of the Salaf used to say, what is the affair of the one that prays by night? Why are their faces so bright? And so one of the Salaf, they responded by saying that is because of the fact that they, at that time, the time that they stand before Allah Azza wa Jalla, there is no one standing before Allah Azza wa Jalla other than Him. And they are alone with Allah Azza wa Jalla at that time. And so they benefit nur from His nur. They benefit light from His light. The statement of Allah Azza wa Jalla addressing His servants when He said at that time, the last third of the night, who is there that will ask of me that I may give to him? Who is there that will seek forgiveness of me that I may forgive him? Allah Azza wa Jalla makes that statement and we are na'imun, asleep. And Allah is saying, who is there that will ask of me that I may give him? And that is from the times, ikhwan, that Allah Azza wa Jalla blesses His servants with the bounties and with the ni'am and with those things that are good for Him. But we are acquainted with being asleep at that time. Similarly, the great reward that is based upon sadaqah, the great reward that is based upon giving in charity, and we are counting those pennies and making sure that where's the 20 pence that I had earlier? Only I had £1 in this pocket here, counting those pennies and concerned with those pennies, rather than nurturing ourselves upon giving. Because by Allah, giving in charity, ikhwan, a person does not become poor because of it. And you do not lose your wealth because of it. Rather, you send your wealth forward. And it grows. And it is nurtured even if it is small. Similarly, from the affairs that relate to the fadl and the virtue of charity, is that the Messenger ﷺ informed us of an affair, ikhwan, that ultimately returns back to our aqidah. It is an affair that relates to our aqidah. And that is that the Messenger ﷺ mentioned Yawm al-Qiyamah, Kull mri'in fi dhilli sadaqatihi Yawm al-Qiyamah. He said that verily every individual will be under the shade of his sadaqah Yawm al-Qiyamah. Every individual will be under the shade of his charity Yawm al-Qiyamah. So on the Day of Judgment, and as at the end of the hadith, the Messenger, he said, Hatta yuqdiya bayna an-nas, until judgment starts between the people, until Allah Azza wa Jal judges between the people. And so that which we have then in that hadith is the fact that Yawm al-Qiyamah, just as we have the shade of the throne of Allah Azza wa Jal, Yawma la dhilla illa dhillu, the day that there is no shade other than His shade, and the shade of Allah Azza wa Jal. From the shade of Allah is the shade that a person receives Yawm al-Qiyamah based upon the charity that he gave. And every individual is under the shade of his charity. And so then ask yourself, in terms of the charity that I've given, what type of shade is it possible that I may receive, if any at all? Similarly, ikhwan, from the benefits and from the virtues of sadaqah is that sadaqah has in it a purification and a cure for the ailments of the body. That is established, ikhwan, in a hadith that is declared sahih by Shaykh Nasiruddin al-Albani. Incidentally, every one of the hadith that we mention is either in the Sahihain or is declared authentic by Shaykh Nasiruddin al-Albani. Now, the statement of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Dawu mardakum bis-sadaqah." The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Dawu mardakum." Cure your sick with sadaqah. Cure your sick with sadaqah. Ibn Shaqiq, he mentioned, سمعت ابن المبارك وسأله رجل عن قرحة جرحت في ركبه منذ 7 سنين وقد عالجها بأنواع العلاج وسأل الأطباء فلم ينتفع به فقال اذهب واهفر بئرا في مكان حاجة إلى الماء فإني أرجو أن يتبع هناك عين ويمسك عنك الدم ففعل فبرئ. He said and narrated that I heard Abdullah ibn Mubarak say, when a man asked him concerning a wound that he suffered in the region of his knee for the period of about 7 years, and he tried various types of cures and nothing was of benefit to him. And the doctors he approached, none of them were able to benefit him. So Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak rahimahullah ta'ala, he said to him, go to such and such a place and build a well. Build, and he spend upon the building of a well. He said, and I hope and I wish that if you build that well, then that water will follow the tracts of irrigation, that they would cause the water to come to that well, and it will be a well that will be used by the people. He said, and so he did so, and then he continued, and that would cause the blood to stop. That would cause the bleeding to stop. And this wound that wouldn't heal, that you dig that well, and that would cause the bleeding to stop. And so, فَفَعَلَهُ الرَّجُلُ, and so the man went and did so, and it caused his bleeding to stop. Or his bleeding, it stopped. His bleeding, it stopped. And so, ikhwan, on the basis of that hadith, the Salaf of this ummah, they saw that from the methods of cure, and a person curing himself from an ailment, is to give in sadaqah. Now, sixthly, and from the affairs, ikhwan, that are from the benefits of sadaqah, is that it has in it a cure for the ailments and the sicknesses of the heart. Particularly, ikhwan, those ailments and those sicknesses that cause the heart to become hard. And oftentimes we hear our brothers saying that, subhanAllah, I don't know what it is, but I just don't get affected by any lectures and speeches. I don't get affected by reading the Quran. I've never cried over my sins in my life. I've never cried thinking about my standing before Allah Azza wa Jalla Yawm al-Qiyamah ever. I've never shed a tear actually. I don't know what it is. My heart seems to be hard. From the things that cure that hard heart, ikhwan, is giving in charity. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, as occurs in a hadith that was collected by Imam Ahmad in his Musnad and declared sahih by Shaykh Nasiruddin al-Albani, that he mentioned, إِذَا أَرَدْتَ أَن تَلِينَ قَلْبَكَ فَاطْعِمُ الْمِسْكِينَ وَامْسَ عَلَى رَأْسِ الْيَتِيمِ. That he mentioned, the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, if you wish that your heart should become soft, then feed the poor and stroke or wipe the head of the yatim, of the orphan. Similarly, ikhwan, from the affairs that that charity brings about benefit in is that every single day, there is an angel that Allah Azza wa Jal, there are two angels in fact, that Allah Azza wa Jal sends down. And that angel, one of them, the two of them supplicate. One of them, as the Messenger ﷺ, he mentions, and we'll mention the hadith, the Messenger ﷺ, he said, ما من يوم يصبح العباد فيه إلا ملكان ينزلان يقول أحدهما اللهم أعطي ممسكا خلفا منفقا خلفا ويقول الآخر اللهم أعطي ممسكا تلفا. The Messenger ﷺ, he said that there is not a day that the servant rises, he sees his morning, except that two angels descend every day. Two angels descend. One supplicates saying, "O Allah, give to the one that spends and that gives in charity, khalafa. Give him a goodly return and a goodly reward for his charity." And the other says, Allahumma ati mumsikan talafa. The other one, he makes supplication and says, "O Allah, give the one that holds back destruction." O Allah gives the one that holds back destruction. And that, ikhwan, is every single day that the servant rises in. And so, ikhwan, there is a dua. The dua, ikhwan, of one who is sinless, of the angels, that we're losing out, benefiting from, ikhwan, when we do not give in charity. Likewise, from its benefits, ikhwan, is that Allah Azza wa Jal will place barakah upon the whole of his wealth. That the whole of a person's wealth, when he gives in charity, it causes barakah to be placed upon all of his wealth, and it does not deplete his wealth. As the Messenger of Allah, he said, "Ma naqasat malun min sadaqah." That indeed wealth is not depleted by sadaqah. Yani it is increased. Sadaqah and giving in charity, it causes one's wealth to increase. So when a person is, and that is increased in the dunya, and he has increased reward for his charity in the hereafter. So when a person is saying, "I don't know what's happening, we're trying with this, and I'm trying with business, or I'm trying to work this project out, or I'm trying to, and the things are not working out for me." It may be that one is losing the barakah or missing the barakah that one obtains when he gives in charity. Likewise, ikhwan, from the benefits, and there are many benefits, ikhwan, that I'd like to share with you. I know time is running short, but we'll mention these ahadith, ikhwan, ala ajala, with something from quickness. Similarly, from the ahadith and from the statements of the Messenger ﷺ that relate to sadaqah, that the Messenger ﷺ indicated that which remains of a person's wealth truly is that which he gives in sadaqah, gives in charity. And everything else is just spent and it's gone. But that which truly remains is that which he gives in sadaqah. In that regard, we have the hadith of Abdullah ibn Shakhir. When the Messenger of Allah, he said that يَقُولُ ibn Adam mali mali, that the son of Adam, he says, my wealth, my wealth, my money, my money. And then Allah Azza wa Jal mentions وَهَلْ لَكَ يَا ابْنِ آدَمْ مِنْ مَالِكَ إِلَّا مَا أَكَلْتَهُ فأفنيت أو لبست فأبليت أو ما تصدقت به فأمضيت. That Ibn Adam, he says, my wealth, but do you possess, O Ibn Adam, from your wealth other than that which you have eaten and is gone, or you've clothed yourself with it and it's worn out, or you've given in charity and you've sent it forward, and you've established it and you've sent it to the hereafter by giving it in charity. Similarly, in another hadith, the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha, that Aisha radiallahu anha, was asked about a sheep that was slaughtered for the sake of giving in charity, and what remained of it. And so Aisha radiallahu anha, she said, "Ma baqiya minha illa katifiha." She said, nothing remains of it other than its shoulder, and other than leg of lamb, or a shoulder of lamb. Nothing remains of it other than its shoulder. And so the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Bal baqiya kulluha illa katifiha." He said, in fact, all of it remains. Actually, all of it remains except its shoulder. إيش معناه? Meaning, that all of it that was given other than the shoulder that remains, that is what is established, and that is what remains really. And as far as that which they had in there with them, that hadn't been given in charity, then though linguistically it is what remains, in reality, all of it remains other than that which hasn't yet been given in charity. And so literally, ikhwan, we have to have within ourselves the feeling that when I give this charity, I'm not losing it. I'm not getting rid of my money. I'm actually establishing it. And it's going to be nurtured and cultivated and increased when I give it. And I truly have to believe that someday I will see that. And that, ikhwan, is no doubt imperative and is important, ikhwan, that we nurture ourselves upon. And that was the way and the da'ab of the righteous and the salihun, that they nurtured themselves upon that. Giving in charity, giving away, not loving and being covetous over wealth. That it's easy. Comes and it goes and we give it. Alhamdulillah. Comes, it goes, we use it correctly, we don't waste it, we don't squander it, and we're easy to give it. We don't have a problem giving it. And that, ikhwan, is no doubt how we nurture ourselves. No doubt, ikhwan, the ahadith likewise indicate that a man Yawm al-Qiyamah will be called from a particular door in Jannah, and that door, ikhwan, is referred to as Babu Sadaqah. And Babu Sadaqah, ikhwan, is a door that the people of Sadaqah will be called from. The Messenger informed of the fact that the people of Salah will be called from the door of Salah, the people of Jihad will be called from the door of Jihad, the people of Siyam will be called from the door Rayyan, and the people of Sadaqah will be called from Babu Sadaqah. And so Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu, when he heard that, he said, "O Messenger of Allah, is there anyone that will be called from all of those doors? You know, these doors for all these righteous actions. Is there anyone that will be called from all of these doors?" And so the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, he responded to him by saying, "Na'am, wa arju an takuna minhum." He said, "Yes, and I hope that you will be one of them." Similarly, ikhwan, from the affairs related to sadaqah and the benefit of sadaqah, ikhwan, is that the giving in charity, the one who has knowledge and gives in charity, then this is from the greatest of stations and from the greatest of manazil, or the greatest level and station that a person can be upon. Indeed, the Messenger ﷺ, in a long and lengthy hadith, ikhwan, that we possibly don't have time to mention, he mentioned that indeed the dunya is for 4 people. The dunya is for 4 people. And from them he mentioned, Abdun razaqahu Allahu malan wa ilma, wa huwa yattaqi bihi rabbahu wa yasilu bihi rahima. He said that the first of them is a man who Allah Azza wa Jal blesses him with wealth and blesses him with knowledge. And so he fears Allah Azza wa Jal, he fears his Lord by way of it, and he ties the bonds of kinship by way of it. وَيَعْلَمُ لِلَّهِ حَقًّا, and he is acquainted on the basis of his knowledge that which Allah has by way of rights. And then the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, فَهَذَا بِأَفْضَلِ الْمَنَازِلِ, and so this is the best of levels. And the one who is of and has that station, then he is upon the best of levels. Likewise, ikhwan, from the benefits of wealth, that the one who spends in wealth, and the one who spends his belongings and his possessions, he is like the one who stands all night and pray and fasts through the day. In that regard, the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he made mention of the fact that there is no jealousy except with two individuals, a man who Allah Azza wa Jal gives him the Quran, and so he establishes it through the day and through the day and night, and he recites it through the day and night. وَرَجُلٌ أَتَاهُ اللَّهُ مَالًا فَهُوَ يَنْفِقُ بِهِ آنَاءَ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ, and a man who gives, or who Allah Azza wa Jal has given wealth, and so he spends it through the day and through the night. This is from the best of the people, from the best of those individuals. And so the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he coupled him to the one who recites the Quran throughout the day and night, the one who gives in charity, that Allah Azza wa Jal likened him to the one who recites the Quran throughout the day and night. For a correction for what I mentioned earlier, here the Messenger likened the one who gives in charity to the one who recites the Quran throughout the day and night. Now there is no jealousy except with these two people. One, the one that Allah Azza wa Jal gives the Quran and he recites it through the day and night, and the second, the one who Allah gives him wealth and he spends his wealth in the way of Allah throughout his day and night. And that is an individual, ikhwan, that Allah Azza wa Jal has established that he is from the types of people that is permissible to be jealous of. Similarly, ikhwan, from the affairs related to charity is, and we'll round up on this note before we mention one or two of the areas of that one gives charity upon, is that charity in it is a dalil and an evidence for the iman, or upon the iman and the belief and the faith of an individual. Charity has in it a hujjah and a proof and an evidence of the iman of a person. When he takes his wealth, and it is the one thing that mankind covet, wealth, and to increase in wealth. When he takes his wealth and he spends it upon other than himself, and to give it to someone other than himself, something that he may have earned or may have been given, something that he loves and covets, that he takes it and he gives it to other than himself, he that immediately doesn't benefit from it, but he gives it to someone else and they're benefiting from it. For you to carry out that action there, and possibly no one else has seen you do so, which is the best type of charity, then that, ikhwan, is a clear hujjah and a proof of the iman and the belief of a person. For that reason, the Messenger ﷺ, he said, وَالصَّدَقَةُ burhan. The Messenger said that sadaqah is a burhan, is a proof, and is a hujjah, is an evidence. And that is, as our scholars mentioned, it is an evidence of the iman of that person. It is an evidence that he truly believes in Allah, he has iman. Because for him to take that which he has and gives it to someone else, and that which he covets, and he gives it to someone else for no reason other than the fact that his Lord has commanded him to do so, and for no reason other than the fact that he believes in that which his Messenger ﷺ has said, that is a clear evidence, ikhwan, of the belief and of the iman of the person who does so. And so, ikhwan, the benefits, no doubt, are many, and they are hujjah. That sadaqah, ikhwan, is likewise a burhan and a proof for him yawm al-qiyamah. It is from the things that he may use to establish the fact that he carried out those righteous actions for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so, just to round up, then, ikhwan, will mention briefly the types of sadaqah. As we mentioned, the best type of sadaqah, ikhwan, is that a person gives that secret sadaqah, that sadaqah that no one knows about. that he gives sadaqah, and no one knows of it, no one is present with him when he does so, and he never tells anyone about it. And one of the things that the shaitan will prize out of an individual is get him to speak about those deeds that he's done in private. And so he begins to address the people and say, I remember one time, when I had a bit of money. So there was this man, I gave him £300, because he needed it, and it wasn't really money, wasn't it? So he begins to speak about the sadaqah that he's given. And that, ikhwan, will deplete the reward of that sadaqah if it does not extinguish it completely, depending upon how and the manner in which he spoke about that sadaqah and spoke about that charity. It may be that was, before he spoke, from the best of his deeds yawm al-qiyamah. Even if it's a small amount of sadaqah. And the best sadaqah, as the Messenger of Allah, he said, is the sadaqah of the one who is sahih, shahih, the one who is of sound body, and he is covetous over his wealth, and he is protectful over his wealth. And not the one who is on the point of death, and so he says, li fulan in kada, wa li fulan in kada. At the point of death, he says, give this to such and such, and give that to such and such. That is not the best wealth. The best sadaqah, as the Messenger of Allah said, is the one who gives when he is sahih, sound body, shahih, fearing poverty. He's in need, he's in that situation, how am I going to get more? When he's in that situation, that he gives in charity. That is the best wealth. That is the best sadaqah, even if it is small. It may be, ikhwan, and there is a beautiful hadith when the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he informed of the fact that 1 dinar may outdo 100,000. And in our terms, that 1 pound may outdo 100,000 pounds that one person gives in charity. In that regard, ikhwan, we have the hadith in Sahih, in the Sunnah of Imam Abu Dawood, and in the Sunnah of Imam al-Nasa'i, that was declared Sahih by Shaykh al-Albani, that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, sabaqa dirhamun mi'at dirham, or mi'at alf dirham. That he said that 1 dirham has outdone 100,000 dirham. And so they said, the companions, قالوا كيف يا رسول الله? How is that? The Messenger of Allah said, كان لرجل درهمان تصدق بأحدهما وانطلق رجل إلى عرض ماله فأخذ منه 100,000 درهم فتصدق بها. He explained how. He said, as for one man, as for the first man, the one who has the one dinar, he said this man had 2 dinar to his name. 2. He took one of them and he gave it in charity. While the second man, he came to his ard, that is, he came to his manifest wealth, and he took from it 100,000. And he gave that in charity. That 100,000 is probably just a small portion of what he possesses. And so the one who gave that 1 dinar from the 2 that he has, this 1 dinar of his has outdone this 100,000 that has been given by that wealthy individual. And that, ikhwan, will indicate to you the fact that it is not the amount that one gives. And this is an important issue that for us to understand and to recognize. It is not the amount that one gives, ikhwan, but there are other variables that relate to how one is rewarded for that sadaqah. The niyyah and the state of his heart when he gives it, and his own financial state when he did so. What does he possess? And how much from what he possessed did he give? These variables cause the station of that sadaqah, even though it may just be a few pennies, or it may be a few pounds, but it caused the station of that sadaqah to be greatly superior to the one who may have given a large amount of wealth. And that, ikhwan, is just as, for example, And from the best of the forms of sadaqah and the best of the causes that a person may give sadaqah in is the cause of building a masjid lillah. And you know of the various projects that are going on up and down the country, ikhwan, and those brothers in various regions, ikhwan, Cardiff, in London, in the north of the country, that are in need of support for the establishment of the masajid that they're building. And the best then of the forms of sadaqah that a person may give is to spend upon that which will return back to yourself, in that you aided and supported the establishment of salah in this place, and that you were from those who, on the basis of what you gave, any part of what you gave contributed to years, centuries maybe, depending on how long that place of worship remains, centuries of ibadah, centuries of ilm, centuries of dhikr, centuries of khair, centuries of individuals embracing Islam, just from that charity that you gave. And it does not necessitate that you have to be the one like the individual that gave the £100,000 to the Masjid Salafi fund, mathalan, or to the project. It could be that you just gave £2, or you gave £1. Not £1 and £2 of yours that you gave, that ikhwan, on the basis of your state, financial state, on the basis of the condition of your heart when you gave it, that it could outdo that 100,000 quite easily. And so, as we mentioned, ikhwan, it is this that we nurture ourselves upon, remembering the fact that our reality here in the dunya is that we're here for a short space of time, ikhwan. And there are certain actions that, though they may be small, if they're constant, that Allah Azza wa Jal much prefers that action to the action that a person does that may be one big action. As the Messenger of Allah, he said that verily the most beloved deed to Allah is adwamuha wa inqal. The most beloved deed to Allah is the one that is most consistent, even if it is small. And so, ikhwan, we nurture ourselves upon that. And finally, ikhwan, the best charity that a person may give is the charity that he gives to his family. The best charity that a person may give is the charity that he spends upon his family. And again, ikhwan, even if it is that £1, £2 that he gives, but he spends it upon his family, or that he aids his mother with a few pounds, or that he aids his father with a few pounds, or his brother, sister, his direct relatives, that is, ikhwan, the best of the charities that a person may give. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as occurs in the hadith Sahih Muslim, he mentioned أربع دنانير, that there are 4 dinars. A dinar أعطيته مسكينا, a dinar that you give to the poor. وَدِينَار أَعْتَيْتَهُ فِي رَقَبَةٍ, and a dinar that you give for the freeing of a slave. He said, وَدِينَارٌ أَنْفَقْتَهُ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ, and a dinar that you spend in the way of Allah, fi sabilillah. And as we mentioned, generally that statement is ordinarily a reference to jihad. وَدِينَارٌ أَنْفَقْتَهُ عَلَىٰ أَهْلِكَ, and a dinar that you spend upon your family. He said, وَأَفْضَلُهَا الدِّينَارُ الَّذِي أَنْفَقْتَهُ عَلَىٰ أَهْلِكَ. He said, and the best of them is the dinar that you spend upon your family. The best of them is the dinar that you spend upon your family. And it's unfortunate, ikhwan, that oftentimes that is the least spent upon area, though it is compulsory upon us, particularly if we're married individuals who have families, that we spend upon our families. And that is the best dinar that a person may give. The Messenger of Allah, he said that as-sadaqatu ala al-miskin sadaqa, wa hiya ala dhir rahimi ithnatan sadaqatun wasila. The Messenger of Allah, he said to give sadaqah to one who is miskin, who is poor, then that is charity. But it is to the one who is a relative too. It is charity and it is sila. It is joining the bonds of kinship. And thus it is better than to give to someone who is needy. And it may be, ikhwan, and we definitely will round up with this narration, it may be that the sadaqah that one gives is to a family member that is filled with hatred for you. and is probably from the worst of the family members in relation to you. The one that shows you the most rancor, the one that shows you the most malice and hatred, the one, ikhwan, that shows nothing but resentment, dislikes you, hates you and your deed and you just you, everything about you, can't stand you. That may be the best sadaqah from the family members that you give. We'll round up with this hadith of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, hadith, ikhwan, that was collected by Imam Ahmad and likewise Abu Dawud and Tirmidhi. And that is that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, أفضل الصدقة على ذي رحم الكاشح. أفضل الصدقة على ذي رحم الكاشح. That the best charity that you can give is upon a relative that shows hatred and resentment to you. The best charity that you can give is upon a relative that shows hatred and resentment to you. Because you know what he said about you. You know what he's been saying about you all of those years. You know how he feels about you. You know how much he hates you. You know how much she speaks about you behind your back. You know what she said to your cousin and to your uncle and to your father and to your mother. You know all of that. And then for you to take from your beloved wealth and to give to that individual, that, ikhwan, takes some iman. And thus the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam referred to it as the best of the sadaqah that a person may give and the greatest of the forms of sadaqah that a person may spend. Inshallah, then we'll round up, ikhwan, on that note, and we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to make it easy, ikhwan, for us to remove this covetousness that we've been nurtured upon, particularly here in the West, nurtured upon being individualistic, and me, and more money for me. And even with our families, ikhwan, that we're mean, and that we're covetous, and that we don't spend upon them, and that He reverses that affair, and causes us to be from those who wealth, ikhwan, is easy for him to spend. It is not connected to him and to his heart. Just as the Salaf of this ummah were, as some of the Salaf mentioned, that the wealth for them was in their hand, not in their heart. Wealth, it was in their hands, but not in their hearts. While us, wealth is in our hearts, even if it is not in our hands. Allah al-Musta'an, wa alayhi al-Tuklan, wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala nabiyyina Muhammad, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Jazakumullah khair. Yeah, تفضل. We've got time. Just a second, Juan, a quick question.
Can you advise us regarding, the fuqara and masakin in this country? You find the drug dealers who come stuck outside the food shop and beg you change or whatever, but the likes of the Romanians or whoever that come and say, you want to give them, you have a shack, thinking, what are you going to do with the money? You want to give them, what do you advise?
Yes, excellent question, Ikhwan. The problems that we face here is that we don't find a lot of real miskeen and real poor people to give our charity to. If you live in many of the countries of the Muslimun and many of the lands of the Arab, for example, you'll find numerous examples, Ikhwan, and numerous opportunities to give your wealth in charity. But here, the problem that we have is, for the most part, the ones who beg, they have the marks of crack pipe on their fingers. And the ones who beg are individuals who, they're begging with the one hand, and then they take your wealth and put it in a Louis Vuitton bag. And that, ikhwan, is a musibah, and it is a trial and a calamity. What we do then is, from the things that we observe, ikhwan, is that we work with the qara'in. We work with the factors that we see present upon that individual. It may be that the person, he asks and he begs, and he may be, ikhwan, for example, a Muslim that we see signs of, for example, the fact that he smokes. But he says, Akhi, wallahi, I'm in a situation. I don't know if you got a few pounds, could just help me. I just need to catch a bus and so on and so forth. But we can smell cigarettes upon him, for example. And that in and of itself shouldn't prevent us from giving. The fact that we smell cigarette upon him. Because it may be that he is army, and he has certain sins. He's fallen into some sins and carrying out some sins. But that in and of itself, shouldn't prevent us from giving to him. And it may be, as occurs with many people, that depression causes them to fall into certain types of sin. So we evaluate the situation on the basis of the outer or the qara'in or the factors that are apparent. If we see then that an individual is asking for some money for food, I haven't eaten in 3 days, but we can see clearly that again the signs of smoking crack are prevalent upon his fingers. Or there are just some signs, the way he's moving, he's twitching and what have you. Those who know the signs of a crackhead will know that clearly is a man that's he's smoking. In that case, if he makes a request for food or some money for food, we go and we buy him the food, as opposed to giving him the £10 or giving him £5. Go and buy him the food. Buy him the food and make him eat it. Some of them are now shrewd, ikhwan, in that when you buy the food, they'll sell it back on a cheaper price and go and buy crap. But naturally, that is not something that you're going to have any knowledge of. But that is something that happens. It's something that happens. Everybody take the food, sell it, and buy crack. But if there is then clear signs that here we have that which is apparently someone who's addicted to drugs or has a drug problem, then we purchase for him that which he claims the money is for. If it is a woman, mathalan, that she's saying, look, honestly, I just need nappies for my baby, for example, then we go and we buy them the nappies. If it is a man, he's claiming, I just need something to eat, then we bring him to the food shop and we buy him something to eat. That then, ikhwan, is the best approach as it relates to someone who clearly has a problem with having just money in their hands, and then they're probably not going to use it except to buy more drugs and make their situation worse. But if it is, though, that somebody makes a request for some help, and there isn't any of those signs of being a professional beggar or being one that is addicted to drugs, Muslim or non-Muslim, Muslim or non-Muslim, that it is permissible, ikhwan, for us to give and to give them in charity. And our niyyah, ikhwan, is what is taken into consideration majorly, that the niyyah behind the action, ikhwan, is what is considered. Number one, and number two, the fact that you spent on what you saw to be a good charitable cause, and you're not able to know the reality, ikhwan, of that individual, if they're a trickster or not. And so, again, ikhwan, to round up, number one, we evaluate the qara'in, we evaluate the factors that are present with this person that's standing in front of us. Do they look like the type of person that's going to use that wealth, or are there any signs for those who know of a person who's going to use the wealth for drugs or use it to buy alcohol and liquor? Or sometimes they'll tell you and give the game away, ikhwan, and mess up their whole game plan. I just want to buy a quarter of Johnny Walkers, if you could just help me with that. In which case, ikhwan, we wouldn't support them upon evil. But if it is that there aren't any signs of them using that money in a foul way, as Allah Azza wa Jal has mentioned, وَلَا تُؤْتُوا السُّفَهَاءَ أَمْوَالَكُمْ, don't give the foolish ones your wealth. If it is then that there are no signs of that and they do look genuinely needy, then, ikhwan, we spend upon them and we aid them from our wealth, and know that our niyyah and our intention is what is evaluated in that action. La shak. La shak. Precedence is given, ikhwan, without doubt, to the needy Muslim over and above the needy kafir. Precedence is given to the needy Muslim over and above the needy kafir. And generally, ikhwan, the usage of the wealth, or giving the needy kafir something from our wealth in charity, we should use it as a means to call them to Allah Azza wa Jalla, and to show that this is from the akhlaq and from the character of the Muslim. and this is how the Muslim is, and come and see us, come and visit us, and this is our mosque is here, and if one has something from leaflet in his car, whatever, give him a leaflet. So he couples his charity with other factors that call that person, or that will be a door opener for him to enter Islam and to look deeper into Islam. Now,
does the origin of your charity affect the eligibility of it when the person has accepted the charity in terms of the origin of your charity?
I.e. from haram wealth, you mean, or? No doubt.
The intention of the person is to give the charity, and the charity has been accepted already and probably been utilized already.
It does depend on just to repeat the question for those who didn't hear, does the origin of the charity have an effect upon the charity itself and the eligibility of one giving that charity? For example, if the origin of his wealth is from haram means, if I'm understanding that right. No doubt, Ikhwan, the origin of the charity does have an effect upon the act itself, and it is possible that a person does not receive anything from that action depending upon how he gained that money. If, for example, his wealth is misappropriated, it's stolen, and then he gives it in charity, then that charity is not accepted. The origin and the asl is that wealth is returned, and that is what is to be done with that wealth. That wealth is returned, and that is a part of his tawbah. And so it is returned to the one that it was taken from. If he does not have the ability to return the wealth, at that stage he gives it in charity. As our scholars mentioned, the one, for example, who misappropriates, or he's had years of haram dealings, or swindling individuals, or practicing fraud, or misappropriating the wealth of people over the years, and he still has some of that wealth and he knows who it belongs to. That if he's able to return it directly without that person, or without having a problem between that person, he gives it straight back and he explains that, look, listen, this happened, I'll be honest with you, I've changed, I'm not like that, I seek your forgiveness and here's your thing back. Or if he's not able to do so, then that will cause a problem, that he returns it back to him by another means and maybe accompanies with it a letter, places a letter within it and gives it back. But if it is that a person, he's not able to find the one who he's misappropriated that property from, then our scholars mention that number one, he gives that wealth in charity, and he doesn't just use it, that he gives it in charity, and he makes dua and supplicates for the one that he misappropriates the wealth from. That he gives it in charity, number one, and that he makes dua for the one who misappropriated that property from, and in which case that charity would be as any other charity, since it is the charity of the one who's made repentance from taking that wealth. And part of his repentance is to give it in charity, to give it away in charity, if he's unable to return it back to its rightful owner. Now, Allah Alam.
How can we help Muslims in Syria and Islam? Because apparently there's no proper channels.
No, I'm sorry. Good question. How do we aid the Muslims in Syria and in those regions that are afflicted, Ikhwan, with the humanitarian problem that we see present there? The origin and the asl, Ikhwan, is that we send them our wealth through trustworthy means, through trustworthy channels. And that, unfortunately, is and can be a real mission to ascertain. And it can be a real mission to ascertain a correct, trustworthy channel for that wealth and for the rightful individuals receiving your wealth. Because the reality of these humanitarian situations is that many people capitalize and exploit the situation, Ikhwan, of those who are in need and are suffering there from our brothers and our sisters. That their organizations usurp the bigger chunk of the wealth and the charity that is given for the purpose of those who are in need, that they usurp the bigger portion, and something from that wealth does go to them, but the bigger portion is used on them and their da'wah and the propagation of their da'wah and what have you, or their organization. And so to find a channel and a means of getting the wealth over there is and can be a problem. So the origin is if there are direct individuals, if there are people that we know have a direct connection, any brothers from Syria who have a direct connection with Syria, as for example with the situation with our brothers in Dammaj and the suffering that they were going through on the hands of the Houthiyun. We had brothers here from Yemen who have direct channels of getting that wealth directly to those who are in need. And so that is something that we can rest assured. We give our wealth to them and we know that it's getting and it's going to where it needs to be. Problem is, Ikhwan, giving to many of these organizations, most of them, Ikhwan, are not, and it is a reality, but are not trustworthy in terms of what they claim they're going to be doing with your money. And so it does require something from research, something from bahth, something from research in finding those who are trustworthy. And every now and again, Ikhwan, there are groups of individuals who travel there for humanitarian purposes, and our wealth can be given to those types of brothers who travel for those purposes. But I would be very, very careful with many of the organizations that claim to be set up to give humanitarian and to extend the helping hand of humanitarian aid to them, because many of them, Ikhwan, do not do what they claim to be set up to do. Allah ta'ala. Inshallah, we're going to have to round up on that note. Ikhwan, jazakumullah khair. والله تعالى أعلم وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.